everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Just going to allow a couple of minutes for everyone to join. In the meantime, if anyone would like to introduce themselves in the chat, it'd be nice to see where everyone's from today. For those of us who just joined, we're just going to allow one more minute for everyone to join us. If you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat, it'd be great to see where you're all from today. I can see in the chat, Carl, you've said that I'm muted. So just to clarify, can everyone hear me okay? Good, fab. Okay, brilliant. Okay, we've had a few more people joining us. So I say let's just go ahead and get started. So if you just joined, please go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. But otherwise, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Catherine and I'm a Customer Success Manager for the Adobe Education team. So today we're going to be joined by my colleague Andy Lambert, who's going to be giving us his top tips for using Adobe Express in marketing. Please note that the meeting today is being recorded, and do feel free to drop any questions you may have in the chat as we're going along. I'm also going to drop a link to Adobe Express into the chat in case you want to follow along as Andy goes. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand over to Andy. So thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for giving a bit of time this afternoon. So let's just go ahead and start sharing. As Catherine said, I'm Andy. I'm one of the product managers working on Adobe Express. And yes, for today, we're going to try and cover three things. So it's going to be quite a high energy session, but as Catherine already mentioned, there's going to be a recording. The slide deck should be in chat as well, so you can follow along. I've created some social media templates as well if you want to take them and use them. But we're going to start by rooting ourselves in some social media strategies. So you might have a strategy already planned, or you might be thinking about how can we improve our results on social media specifically for 2025. So that's what part one's going to be all about. Then part two, we're going to start diving into Adobe Express and then starting to build some projects together. We're going to create 3 separate projects together. And then we'll lead that into part three, which is how can we scale our content output, which is something that I think many people working in marketing and particularly social media struggle with because the endless demand for content is real. So how can we lighten the load on us? How can we speed up content creations? How can we smooth our workflow? So we're going to cover some of those elements. There's been so many new things added to Adobe Express of late, so there'll be quite a lot coming your way over the next hour or so. So feel free to ask me any questions, and of course we can follow up after the meeting as well if we need to. All right, part one. Let's start with where we should. Let's root ourselves in some social media strategy. I don't think I'll need to really remind anyone about why social media matters, but some big stats. 58% of people discover brands first through social media, whether it's brands they're buying or universities they're looking at going to. Naturally, social media drives purchase intent more than anything else. And I've been tracking how this compares to search over the last couple of years. And it's very interesting to see that social media has now overtaken search in terms of how people discover brands and products first. So social media is very much leading here. And naturally, it has a distinct and direct impact on purchasing behavior, as we can see here. But I think the most important thing here, and this really underlines the incredible power of social, is that it really helps brands, businesses, organizations, universities build word of mouth at scale and build a reputation at scale, because the rules and the fundamentals of marketing have never changed. The number one rule that defines a brand is what other people say about you. So word of mouth is always, has always, and will always be the most powerful marketing channel, and social media allows us to light a fire under that. So with that, let's look at some of the 6 golden rules of social media. So things change rapidly in the world of social. I've spent my last 10 years of my career building businesses in social media, building social media companies, etc. So I spent a lot of time, far too much time, if I'm honest, spending time looking at what's driving the social media networks, what's changing the algorithm and all that stuff. But really out of that, it can be very easy to get lost in terms of everything that's happening. There's over 5 billion people that log into social media every single day. So it's very easy to get lost. But there's actually 6 fundamental truths that do not change. So I'm going to go through these at a high level. I mean, you can read the slide, but I'll add a bit of color to these as we go. As already mentioned, word of mouth is our ultimate ambition. That is what we're using social media for, is to build our brand, to get more people talking about us and drive positive sentiment around our organizations. That is our number one ambition. And a way to help us unlock that is all through collaborations. In fact, I don't see businesses and organizations doing this enough. They often think when they start to think about social media, they think about their feed and what content they're posting to their own feed, which is, that matters to a degree. But what they don't think enough about is what other people are saying about them. What collaborations can you drive? Who can you work with to help extend your reach? Because it's when other people start talking about your business and organization, that's when the real magic starts happening. So building those opportunities for collaboration, utterly essential. Number 3, participation drives engagement. Engagement is the thing that drives all social media networks, and the more posts get engaged with, whether it's people watching it, whether it's people sharing it or liking it, engagement is the thing that drives reach. So the more people interact with it, the more reach you're going to get. And a great way of driving that engagement is by encouraging participation, making your audience the center of the content. Remember, social media content is very different from other promotional marketing content because it's not about us, it's about others. And that's the thing that makes social successful. So when we're talking about participation, we're talking about getting people involved in our content. That could be by using quite like some of the new tools on Instagram, like the Add Yours stickers. That's a really popular way of encouraging interaction on your posts, or simply just by asking a question and having a simple call to action at the end of your post to say, what do you think about this? What's your experience of whatever the post is about? Encouraging that interaction. Participation drives engagement. Number 4, as I've said, engagement drives reach. The more your posts get interacted with, the more social media networks reward that with having your posts go into more people's feeds. That's the number 1 tip for you getting your content seen by more people, is by having your content to be more engagement worthy. Reach leads to awareness. What does that actually mean? With the more people that see your content, the typical marketing law is that people will need to see a piece of content or a message 7 times before they become cognitively aware of it. So that means that we need to ensure that we keep posting and also keep other people talking about us, because the more reach we get, the more awareness we'll get. And the simple rule of marketing is this, is like the best product isn't always the most feature rich or technically the best. It's the one that's first to mind. And as humans, we're inherently flawed creatures because we have so many cognitive biases. And one of those cognitive biases is a recency bias. The more things that we see more recently, it'll mean that whatever we're looking at will come first to mind when we're looking to make that decision. So that's where reach and awareness is so important for helping us drive preference for our audience, because the more people are surrounded with a message, the more that people see their friends and peer groups talking about a certain message, the more we become cognitively aware of it, the more it becomes first to mind when we suddenly start to think that, oh, okay, we're now in the market for said problem or product or university. So they're the 6 fundamental rules of social media that should guide all of our strategies. They're non-changing. There's not swayed by, oh, Threads has appeared, what do we do with Threads? Or no one's using X anymore, what's happening? All of that nonsense can be very easy to get disorientated by. Stripping away some of that and just focusing on the fundamentals, I find always a very useful way to approach social media strategy. Root ourselves in the truisms, make the audience the center of everything that we're trying to do, and that will give us the best chance of success. So there's some fundamentals. Some of that you're probably fully aware of. And of course, with social media, let me caveat everything I'm about to say over the next 10 minutes, is going to be there is no single right way to do social. Yes, I've spent 10 years in it, but it means I've got a perspective, but it's only my perspective. So there is no right way. We're always testing, we're always learning. As soon as someone says this is the only way to do social, you'll realize that they're talking nonsense. It's always evolving. So hopefully some of these tips you might find useful. Feel free to take and use as you please, but by no means think that if you're not taking any of these approaches that I'm going to suggest over the next 10 minutes or so, don't think that you're doing something wrong, right? Because there's no single right way. Hopefully these suggestions you can find being helpful. Anyway, now we got the foundations out of the way, let's start setting up our strategy. And you might have a strategy around social media already, which is totally fine. Or you might be thinking about how can we optimize it. Let's keep things beautifully simple because we've only got 6 questions we need to ask ourselves to make sure we've got an inherently solid social strategy. Number 1, we need to think about who do we want to care? What is our minimum viable audience? Who is the most specific audience that we want to appeal to? Number 2, why should they care? And this is really important. Once we truly understand who we want to care, then we need to think about why should they care? What problems do they face? What are the challenges that they're facing right now? What are all of the decisions that they need to make? When you start to truly understand the audience you're trying to solve for, and I'm sure many of you, running marketing, or if you're in marketing in a university situation, you probably inherently know this, but it's really important that we get in the minds of our audience, because the thing I'm a huge advocate for in marketing is we always prioritize psychographics over demographics. Demographics are pretty lazy ways to think about marketing, of like, oh, we're trying to market to 18-year-olds, etc. Psychographics are much more important because they help us understand the mindsets and the behaviors of the audience that we're trying to serve and the things that they're going through. That, again, like I said, social media is all about others, not ourselves. The more that we can understand inherently the humans that we're trying to serve and those biases, those problems, those challenges that they're facing, that helps root everything that we'll create in something that's going to be inherently valuable. And then how can we be sure? This is a step I see so many marketers missing, and it's such an easy one, which is once we've got a hypothesis of truly who are we best fit for and why are we the best fit for them, we need to go and ask them. We need to ask them and try and figure out if our hypotheses actually are true. And I sit with far too many marketing teams that like to look at spreadsheets and that's it. They don't spend enough time sitting with their target audience and truly understanding whether what we've asserted about our audience actually is true. And if we can validate our hypothesis with our audience, then we can make sure that we know exactly who we're trying to serve and we can understand exactly what they care about in their own language. And that is the important point. All right, that's a good foundational step. Then the final 3 questions we need to ask ourselves is this. What do we want to be known for? People won't remember what you said, they won't remember what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. So what's the feeling that we want to engender? What's the thing that, if people are only going to remember one thing about you, what is that thing? Very easy question to ask, very hard question to answer, but very, very important for guiding our strategy. So what is our purpose? What is our mission? What are we out here to solve? And that really helps connect us at a human level. And I'm a huge advocate for businesses, organizations, universities, whomever, like pulling down the kind of corporate veil and allowing social content to be much more human driven, much more personal, ultimately relatable. What change do we seek to make? People are motivated by missions and purposes, as we all are, to be honest. So what change do you want to seek to, are you seeking to make? What value are you adding to people? And then, of course, as part of all of this, and you notice that the final question of these 6 questions is the only one that I've thought about us, which is what do we want to achieve? So that's it. Thinking about our audience, thinking about the psychographics, what do we want to be known for, what change do we want to make, and what do we want to achieve? That's it. Those 6 questions will give us everything we need to know to root our strategy in some truisms and allow us to create the best possible content that's going to resonate with the individuals that we're trying to serve. So with that, that's it for the kind of like social media strategy foundations. So let's look at how can we actually build a strategy? How can we structure it? And this is where we're going to start talking about some templates that we've created as well. So we'll be getting onto Adobe Express in just a moment. But before we do, I can't talk about social media without giving some data because I'm an absolute nerd for social media data. I'm always tracking what's happening. And there's a couple of very important things that it's really important to consider as we're building our strategy. So this data, this is global data, but you can see the data specific to the UK. So the audience that we have on this call here will notice that typically users in the UK have about 6 different social platforms, right? Doesn't mean that they spend all their time. They'll typically major on one and have others as more kind of secondary platforms. But the important message here is that if we think our audience are only on Instagram, as an example, that's just simply not correct. Our audience are split across multiple platforms, so we're going to need multiple platforms in order to maximize our reach and our distribution, maximize awareness, and maximize our opportunity to drive purchase intent, as we were just talking about earlier. So thinking multi-platform is very important. Now, this goes into a bit more detail. Now, this slide is a little bit overwhelming. I can appreciate that. It's also my favorite, which goes to show quite how nerdy I am for some of this stuff. But the reason that this is important is as follows. If we look down the left-hand side, if I just find my mouse for a second, if you look down the left-hand side, you'll notice that across all of these platforms, less than 1% are unique to the platform. So kind of reiterating what we just said in the previous slide, people are across multiple platforms. But if we take that example a moment ago, what I said, like, let's say Instagram is our kind of primary channel, and I'm all for people having like a primary channel that gets the majority of their attention. That's no problem at all. But let's say, for example, Instagram is our thing. We'll notice that, we're not going to reach all of our potential audience just by posting to Instagram. If we want to maximize our reach, we need to think multi-channel, which means that, let's have a look. Facebook have 80% of Instagram users, YouTube 77%, TikTok 50%. So if you look along that line where you've got Instagram there, you'll notice the other platforms that you could potentially use to maximize your reach of your content. So if Insta is the #1 platform, you can see where those audience overlaps are. So if we're thinking multi-channel, this data can really help us orientate what platforms do we want to add to our mix to help us maximize the chances of our content being seen. So hopefully that makes a degree of sense, but I find that strategically really useful to help us understand platform strategy. What platforms do we want to keep in our mix? And of course, I haven't said this already, so as a quick side note, if you have any questions at all as I'm going through this, feel free to pop it in the chat, and Catherine will interrupt me and we'll answer. I'm happy to take any questions related to social or express. Cool. Couple of other tips related to platforms, and I won't force you to look at these charts and data because it's quite dull for most people. #1, Instagram Reels is incredibly good at the moment for watch rate. So the amount of views on Instagram Reels is performing incredibly well, works really well with smaller accounts too. And this is the marvelous thing that's happened with Instagram of late, because they've switched their algorithm where it's no longer determined by followers, how much reach your content gets. So it's kind of leveled the playing field. So for Reels in particular, the thing that will drive success in your Reels is all about engagement, watch time, number of shares, number of interactions, that kind of stuff. That's the thing that drives growth, not number of followers. And that's really important. So Reels has a great opportunity to get distribution. What you'll notice that when you're posting Reels, you'll tend to get a great degree of views, and those views predominantly will come from outside your follower base, which is great for reach. Also, YouTube Shorts is starting to perform really well. YouTube is really investing hard into Shorts. There's about 2.5 billion users of YouTube, so it's growing at an incredible rate, double the rate of Instagram in terms of overall numbers. I don't see enough brands spending time on YouTube, if I'm honest. So I think it's a bit of an underrated opportunity, particularly YouTube Shorts. So YouTube Shorts, Insta Reels, great for reach. And when we're talking about engagement, getting people to interact on your content and really drive meaning from your content, TikTok and LinkedIn really strong right now. And bear in mind, everything I'm talking about right now is from an organic perspective. So none of what I'm suggesting here from a data point of view is anything to do with paid. This is just organic, which I always like to think about because that allows us to maximize our chance of success without a media budget associated to it. So TikTok really strong for engagement, as is LinkedIn. LinkedIn particularly strong for video too. LinkedIn are investing hard into video too. That does. So even though if that might sound like, oh, right, I've got to think about multiple channels, I've now got to think about YouTube Shorts and Reels and TikToks and LinkedIn, got to think about all of that. But the reality is that quite often you'll be able to repurpose your content across multiple different platforms. And because all of these platforms are coalescing around short form video as a primary format, it does mean it's actually a lot easier to repurpose and reuse our content to allow us to kind of maximize the impact of our content. You know how I said at the beginning, it's always very challenging for anyone in marketing and content that has to produce social media content because we just got to create so much of it. So we need to make sure and think about how can we scale our efforts and maximize our efforts. Repurposing content is a huge part of that. I'll show you how we can use Express to help us with that in just a moment. Right then, let's get into building a strategy, and that'll then lead us into Adobe Express, doing a quick time check to see how we're doing. So there's 3 parts to building a content strategy. Consider these the building blocks. We've got our pillars, which are the foundations. They do not change. I recommend 3 to 5 pillars. Bear in mind, all of these will be based on the learnings that we discussed a couple of slides ago related to who your minimum viable audience is, the psychographics, their problems and challenges they face, etc. That's the thing that's going to define the pillars. That will also help define your content themes, which sit on these pillars. These themes are the kind of types of content that you'll create, like a behind the scenes type of content. And then you've got content topics. Content topics are the actual posts you'll create. And to kind of break that down, what I've done is create some templates for these. But before we go into that, let's show you what an example of these pillars could look like. So let's start with the pillars. Let's start with those foundations. So bear in mind, this is something that I've created after like 10 years of doing this type of stuff. And when I've looked at all of the most successful brands on social, they've typically worked across these pillars, whether they've known it cognitively or not. These pillars give you really good structure to your content strategy. So I would say these pillars would never change. So bond content is all about, like as I said earlier, pulling back the corporate veil, allowing much more kind of interaction, human level interaction, things that ultimately connect us as individuals. That's your kind of bond content, much more kind of meme worthy, share worthy type of stuff, not related to brand at all. Then you've got educate. When we educate people, we build trust. When we build trust, trust is the thing that drives purchase behavior and allows us to have purchase preference. So this is where education content comes in. Education content's all built around those problems and challenges and those general psychographics that we spoke about earlier. What do people need to know, and how can we educate them to get there? Which will be, you'll know this well because we've got a great audience for that particular pillar on the call right now. Showcase is all about showing where you demonstrate your expertise. What do you do? What outcomes do you deliver for your audience? And kind of show that in a non-salesy way, right? So I'll explain what that means in a second and give you some examples. And tell content. So tell content is the simple stuff. That's the promotion bit. But you'll notice that's last in these pillars for a purpose. See far too many businesses looking towards social and seeing it as another channel to promote and wondering why they don't get results. Promotion has its place, but it has its place at the last of these pillars. We need to build a foundation of trust, which means getting to know people through bond. It means adding value through education. It means by subtly like flexing our capabilities through showcase. And then we've earned the permission to say, hey, this is what I would like you to do. So you can see how this represents, these pillars represent a really nice flow from how we build trust, how we drive interaction, how we build engagement, and how we still get results. All right. Catherine, if you wouldn't mind resharing this link that I shared earlier related to this template, related to this deck that I'm presenting. So this deck is for you to use because I'm flying through this today in the space of this hour. So you can take this deck, you can reread some of the stuff I've spoken about, and also it's also reflected in this QR code. But the reason for that is that I've created a bunch of templates that you can use related to these pillars. So feel free to take and steal these and use as you please. They're all remixable. Do whatever you want with them. Hopefully you find them useful. So first pillar, that bond, which is about introducing, engaging, that more human level content. So underneath that, we could have things like, share your story, the background of the organization, where you've come from, etc. Your story as an organization, also stories, highlighting the stories inside the organization too, making the employees within your business the hero of the story is also very important. Quote posts, always work really well, like industry quotes and memes, that kind of stuff always performs very well, creates like a shared understanding between an audience. And also like just having that openness to do like an AMA or Q&A type of session where anyone can ask questions really shows openness, again, shows that kind of one-to-one connection. Educate could be like top resources, best practice tips, industry news, things you need to know, or also an opportunity to celebrate other people too. This tactic is not used enough on social, and it's a win-win-win type of tactic where use your social posts to celebrate the work of others, tag them in. Also means you grow reach because people are going to appreciate being recognized. So whether that's particular authors that you respect, maybe some influencers that you respect, some other creators on social media that you want to shout out and recognize, those things are also really powerful. So that's your kind of education content. Again, in this deck, each of these are hyperlinked, so you'll notice that you can use Adobe Express for creating presentations as I'm doing today, and you can just click those links and access those remixable templates and use as you please. Examples of showcase ones could be like behind the scenes, showing what happens within your organization, testimonials from happy students or customers or whomever. Progress updates, great way of showing like this is what we're trying to do, this is our mission to do X. Like I said at the beginning, people get behind a mission when you declare your mission publicly and say this is what we're trying to do or improve or change. People get behind that. So progress updates towards that work really well. Case studies, don't need to explain that because you will get that. And this is your kind of tell content. Launches, limited time offers, competitions work really well. We'll actually be creating an example there too. Great opportunity to drive engagement or sales and that kind of stuff. This is your promotion bit. We all get that because we all understand the promotion bit of marketing, but really it's the 3 pillars before that actually make the difference. So as a little bit of a final recap before we go into Express, all under those 4 pillars, they're never changing. And underneath those 4 pillars, you've got themes and topics that ultimately allow you to create a really well-structured content strategy. All right, so with that, I'll finally stop waffling and just head us into Express. So hopefully you find that kind of useful to help us think about how we structure our content plans. So here we are in Adobe Express, and we're going to go to Schedule on the left-hand side, which is your social media content planner. So what you're going to notice here is that I've actually used draft posts to mark these pillars in my calendar, so I know on specific days what am I trying to do. So here I know my educate content needs to happen on Wednesday. I typically do about 3 posts a week. This is just my personal cadence, but there is no best practice for how many times you should be posting a week. All it is like have some degree of consistency. The more you post, however, the faster you will grow. That's just a sad reality of social media. So here we go. We use these as draft posts, which are a nice way of structuring. You can drag and drop and move things around. So here I've got all of my pillars already mapped out. And the nice thing about this, it lowers the cognitive load when it comes to creating our content, because we're not looking at a blank calendar going, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to post about? We know exactly what we need to do because we know our pillars, we understand our audience, and we have some idea of themes and topics that we want to create. We've also very recently, in fact, just yesterday, added this feature of some of these post suggestions that I've just shared in templates. We've actually put them directly in your calendar here. Like I said, day in the life or industry news or share your story, product launch post. So here, this is going to give you extra hints and tips to create some content related to these things, because these types of content are evergreen, will continue to perform well, and you can repurpose and use as you need. So excited to hear what you think about that. And of course, we've also got national days in here too, because naturally things like Halloween, there's an opportunity to create lots of content around that too. So if we click on Halloween, for example, we're given a bunch of template suggestions that we could build social content out of as well. So the calendar here is for helping you stay organized, drag and drop and reorganize and make sure you've got a real solid social strategy, and also to help ignite your imagination and inspiration. So that's your calendar. Now, we're going to start creating, because we're going to pretend that we are a brand called Live Well, which is a cafe brand. And we've created our brand just here. So if we just go into brands on the left hand side, Brands are one of the best parts of Express, and there's lots of good parts, but having your brand set up in Express, I'm sure you'll all well know this anyway, is one of the biggest time-saving hacks that you'll have. And this brand allows you to store your logos, colors, fonts, assets that you're going to use in your content, and very importantly, in the case of what we're going to be doing today, all of your templates as well. So here we've got a bunch of templates that we're regularly going to use as part of our content. All right. So I'm going to show you one final thing as well, because we've just recently added this to Express, and this is projects. Projects, really, really useful area of Express, because a project will allow you to share a whole load of templates, files, folders, assets, and brands, and share that with a set of individuals that you define. So you can create as many of these projects as you need, and this is a great way to facilitate collaboration. If you've got a team you want to collaborate with and share a whole range of folders and brands and libraries with them, a project is a really good way of doing that. Also within projects, we've just added this only today, as I'm sure you see, Adobe Express is growing very quickly. We can also add calendars in our projects. So I've obviously got too many calendars, so I'm not adding it into that one. So if I go to projects and look at the one where I've actually got a calendar added here, so you notice that in this project, we've got a bunch of files, we've got our brands and libraries, etc. And we've also got our shared calendar. This is a really important thing, because what I've just been showing you in schedule here, this is our personal calendar. So if we're building content ourselves, maybe building our own personal brand, all fine, we can use our personal calendar. But if we want to start creating content with a team and building content together, create a project, add all of the shared elements that you want to keep in this project. Make sure you share it with the people that you define, because you can define your permissions here, like can edit, can view only as well. So this is a really nice way of encouraging lots of people to then view your shared calendar together. You define the permissions, we can create content together. Here we can manage our connections and connect this to all of our social channels, etc., as you'd expect. And it's a great way if we have a team involved in the content creation efforts, these shared calendars are going to be super useful. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to start creating from one of the templates that I had shared earlier, actually. So I'm just going to go back to this deck that we've just been going through. So this behind the scenes template, I'm just going to open it. So hopefully that won't take too long to open. There we go. So when you look at any template, this is why saving templates is such a huge time saver for Adobe Express. Create those templates and allow them to become remixable. Save them in your brand library, as we've just been talking about. Save them in a project and share them with others, because creating templates is going to really speed up your content creation efforts, which allows anyone to just go ahead. I'm going to remix this one. Let's do a quick check for time. I think we're doing well. So here we've got a template, and we've got a template that's designed to be a behind the scenes post, as we were just talking about. Now, as I mentioned, we're this Live Well brand, and we're just launching our brand new cafe. So in order to do this, we can take this template, use the foundations of it, but very quickly swap out the content. So if I swap out this first video, I can click here, and if I just go into the top left, I'm going to replace. And I could replace with any of these, but I'm actually going to just replace with upload and very quickly add one of the videos that we've got here. I'm going to move to the second scene and going to, again, replace with upload and move to this scene here. And then finally, on this third scene in the video, I'm going to go ahead, replace with upload and add this third scene. So very quickly, we've stayed within the same structure of this video template, but now it's actually reflecting like a behind the scenes video to help reflect, this is our brand new cafe. So now we've got some, I've actually used this from Adobe stock, but of course you could be using your own videos. Let me just go ahead and reframe that one. So obviously you can reframe and organize, and I'm going to move that into the middle. There we go. So we've got nice, very easy to make this video using a template just to remix it. Of course, some of these elements though are still not on brand. So for that, we're going to just go to brands. And then within the editor, we'll be able to take these brand elements. So if we go to our Live Well brand that we're building here, we can just use one-click apply brand, which is going to apply our fonts and our color palette straight away. Now, we can shuffle it and define, actually, you know, are we happy with that color combo? This one, actually, I think I am. So I'm going to go with this. So there we go. So now this video is very quickly on brand, but we can add some other elements too. So let's stick in our brand library here. Let's go ahead and add our logo here. Let's pop our Live Well logo just into the bottom of this. We'll make sure it's kind of branded. Okay, so with that, I'm also going to just ungroup that for a second, and I'm going to change the title of this to Behind the Scenes. I'm just going to shrink that font slightly and make it maybe a touch bigger. There we go. Pop it here. And I'm going to update the subtitle. So our new cafe launch. Cool. Now, I'm not feeling particularly creative, and I'm not a wordsmith at the best of times, if I'm honest. So we've now added a rewrite feature. So brand new to Express, we can press rewrite, and we might just want to rephrase this, make it sound a bit more inspirational, because I think mine sounds a touch flat. I think you'll probably agree. So this will use generative AI to write or give us some suggestions of how we might want to rewrite this. Of course, you need to accept the AI terms. Embarking on the journey of our new cafe. Quite like that. Cool. We're going to go with it. Now, a touch long, so let me just bring it in a little bit. And there we go. We'll add that here. Now, this text appearing like that, I think we can make it look a little bit better. Let's have that one fading in. We've improved text fades too, so you'll notice that it fades in at each letter, so it just looks a bit nicer. And you'll notice as we're editing this video, we've toggled on show layer timing, so we can see when things are happening in our video to make sure everything is timed to perfection. So here, if we just go through, nice, that looks pretty good. And let's give these scene 2s a title. And as we're talking about and documenting behind the scenes of our new cafe launch, it got very busy. So, and then third title, say, I think we can call that a successful launch, right? So we'll just go with that, and there you go. How quick was that, just to then create a behind the scenes video just by simply remixing this template? We can take it even further though, so we can go ahead, add audio, and I think we're going to need something that maybe feels, maybe some of this acoustic vibe. So I've clicked media here, and as we clicked audio, it's defaulted us to this. We've got a lot more choice in audio than we used to, which is fantastic. So we could have a voiceover to this, so we could record a separate voiceover. We could upload our own music. Obviously, just be mindful if you're uploading that to social licensing, yada, yada, you'll know all that. But here we've got licensed stock music that you could use, or even better, if this video is destined for TikTok, you can use the TikTok Symphony Assistant, which loads on the right-hand side, which will allow you to select from TikTok trending sounds, which are commercially licensed. So they're ready for you to use. So that can be really powerful. But of course, you know, you'll only be able to take that music and publish to TikTok, but you can do it all from here. So I hope this is starting to kind of paint the picture as to what is possible with Express. We've got a lot more to do in this session, but just to kind of recap, we've spoken about strategy. You can now start to manifest that strategy within your calendar, start to use the templates to then bring those elements of those themes that we've just been speaking about, like behind the scenes, to life, and bring them to life through templates, and then start to remix those templates really easily, either by using some of your uploaded media or stock media too. Now, let's go ahead and add this music here. And now we've got this in, we have got probably one of them, actually not probably, was the most requested feature until we launched it last week, which is finally fade in and fade out. So now we can fade in our music and out as well. Now, I'm going to just quickly reshare, because I realized I didn't reshare with sound, because, you know, we're going to need sound. So let me just stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to make sure I share with audio this time. So let's just go back into it. There we go. So hopefully you can hear this. So hopefully that gives you a sense as to like how we can start remixing this content, adding a bit of audio, really to start bringing this content to life. And of course, this isn't the finest creation we ever made, because we're making this live together in 5 minutes, but hopefully it's starting to paint the picture. As of course, as we kind of toggle on, as we click on this this main scene line here, we can see when those animations are happening. Of course, any elements we can animate as we so please. Click on anything, click animation, and I think we'll have this one popping in. So now when we play the video, popping in. In fact, I actually want that to pop in a little bit later. So here we can time where our animation starts. Okay, a bit better. So hopefully it gives you a sense as to some of the capabilities that we can do with audio and sound and visual, etc., and how we've remixed that template. Now, we're going to go ahead and remix another template. So we're going to go back to that deck that we were working on. Let's go to, what should we create now? I think we're going to create one of these competition posts. So let me just open that one. Okie doke. Right, let's start a new file from this. So what we're going to do with this one, so this is a competition post. So like I mentioned earlier, again, we're using this as a template, as our start point. And competition posts always really useful, both for promotion purposes and also to grow your following too, because you can give away something in return for some form of engagement, follow, whatever it might be. All right, so now we can kind of commence the remixing process of this. So if we press replace at the top here, we can replace with brands. Let me just go back to the actual brand that we're using here. As you can see, we've got quite a few brands here. And this is a really nice quick way of accessing all of your brand stuff and just swapping it out. Swap out the avatar. Let's quickly change this one to live well. And we'll leave the text for now. There's a couple other things we can do. So we can kind of use mixed media replace. So in this instance, I'm going to replace this. I'm going to replace it with a stock video, and I'm going to look for a cafe. Let's have a look. Maybe something a bit better. That works. Let's go with that. So now we've taken something that's entirely static, and now we've added an animated element to it, but we're not done yet. So we're going to get back to brands. We're going to apply our brand to this. There we go. So now very quickly, we've got our fonts and our color palette. So that's the orange that we use, which is all good. So already looking better. This background, though, could be improved. I think we're just a bit bland. So what we're going to do is going to go into media. And again, we're going to look for some videos here, but we're going to look for texture. So we're going to go with this kind of paper texture here. And it will seem a bit weird why we're doing this, but it will become clear in a second. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill the background with that. And you'll notice that we've got the layers panel on the right-hand side. And where you see you've got like the number 2 or 3 or whatever, that's related to grouped elements. So things that are grouped together in the layers. So I'm just quite a few layers in this. I'm just going to go ahead and keep on pulling that one right to the back. There we go. Now it's at the back. We've now got like a video on video thing going on here, but that's a bit much. I'm going to go ahead. That video is a little bit crazy, so I'm going to slow that on down. So you notice we've got our video controls here of volume, speed, etc. So cool. So that's now bringing it to life. I think before that was just some static image that we had there on a plain background. But I like the orange. So let's go ahead and bring some of that orange back. And here now we've got some opacity. We can go ahead and kind of see the backdrop is changing. So it's not as vivid as it was before, but it's really starting to capture people's attention now. So again, we've just taken something that's static and we've added those elements to let me speak a bit better. Added those animated elements to it now. Cool. All right. So also what we can now do is very easily resize this. So we can now take this and resize it. I'm going to resize that to an Insta story as well. So you can start to think about, again, like I said earlier, the importance of thinking multi-channel and putting our content across multiple different platforms, really important. And this is going to help us do this. So then we just resize that. So there we go, very quickly. If I just go to our pages, we've now resized it. And actually what I meant to do, I'm going to make that an instant square post. I'm going to duplicate and resize because I needed 2 of those. So, alrighty. And in fact, I'm just going to come back a second, and I'm just going to quickly do Insta story again, duplicate and resize. There we go. Right then, so now we started to take this content and have it in multiple different formats. So what we can do with this is start to share it directly to social. Now, with this, I'm only going to select one page. Now we're in this multi-page view, and just as a reminder, we get into that multi-page view just by pressing this. So let's click here, and we've just got this single page selected. I'm going to press share, and what I want to do is press schedule post. Cool. And when my screen wakes up, there we go. We're going to go ahead and choose the channels we want to share it to. Because it's a square post, this will sit quite well across multiple different networks. Here I'm actually sharing it to my personal calendar, but what you'll notice, if you've got multiple different projects, you'll notice that you'll have all of the different calendars associated to those different projects. So you can start thinking about where do you actually want to distribute that content to, and you've got a lot more choices now. But here I'm just going to send it to my personal calendar. It's just going to be a post, not a reel, and I'm going to call this competition post. Oops, if I can spell competition post. And what we're going to do, because again, I'm not feeling tremendously creative and I'm no wordsmith, there we go, I'm going to use generative AI. Perfect. Right, we're going to run with that, of course. Here it's given us some guidance as to where we can insert our copy related to the specifics of our particular competition, which we can do that. We might want to switch up the hashtags, but again, just as we saw with rewrite when we're in the editor, we've got the same generative AI text capabilities here, of which you could shorten and lengthen, rewrite it again. And what I also really love is that you might like the core of it, but there might be a certain piece that you maybe just wanted to rewrite. You can just highlight that bit you want to rewrite and you can just rewrite it here. Really nice way just to quickly refine things so you're not spending too long worrying about copy. We can then preview it, see how it's going to look across Facebook, across Insta, across LinkedIn. So that's all looking pretty good to me. And of course, now I'm just going to save it as a draft because I don't actually want that one publishing to my channels. I'm going to put that out for next week, define the time. Incidentally, social content typically performs the best between 8 and 10 a.m. on most networks. The only exception is TikTok, where it's in the evenings. I'm just going to go ahead and add that as a draft. Perfect. So that one's done. So we can just go ahead, however, and take this. So that, you know, this one is now in a different format. We can just go ahead and share that. Just share that one directly to Insta. And I'm going to share that one as a story. So there we go. I'm just going to share that as a story. I'm going to, again, schedule that to happen on the 11th at 1600. Let's go with that and save as draft. See how quick that is to then start kind of repurposing content across different formats and then starting to share that into our calendar, of which we're going to look at in just a second. Right, quick time check to see how we're doing. All right, we're doing all right. I think we can probably squeeze in one last project, actually. Catherine, do we have any questions whilst I'm doing this last one?
No questions just yet, thank you.
Sure. Nice, perfect. Alrighty, so what I've done here is just press this plus button, and I've gone to this option here called import from other apps. You'll notice that there is a whole range of apps that you can use to import content into Adobe Express with. So especially if you're new to Express and you're moving projects from somewhere else, this can be really helpful. But in this instance, I'm going to work with a Photoshop project. So here I've got a choice now. Do I want this to be a linked image? So do I actually want people not to mess about with what I've created and just have that as a linked image? Or do I want to make this a fully editable Express project? And that's what I'm going to choose in this instance. Because what we're going to do here is show you how you can take something that's created on one of Adobe's Pro Tools, Photoshop in this instance, how we're very quickly going to convert that into a fully editable project in Adobe Express. And the reason we'd want to do this is to allow us with some much simpler flexibility to start remixing this design. So what I mean by that is this. So this is what we've created. We can see all of our layers are maintained, see our layers panel. So, you know, the conversion looks good. So what we can now do is start remixing this. And this is going to be really important for how we scale content, social content creation in particular. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to remove the background. So already we're going to start switching up this design. We're going to remove the background. I'm actually just going to remove it a little bit here. So this is to promote our Sips at Sunset campaign, which does sound very nice considering how rainy it is at the moment. And what I'm now going to do, I'm going to head back to media, go to videos, and I'm going to look for a sunset beach. Let's go with that. Oh yeah, that looks nice. I'm going to go with that. Cool. So now we've taken something that was static directly from Photoshop, and now we're adding it as an animated project. There we go. Let's center that a little bit. And again, I'm just going to right click. Right click is always really powerful. So I'm going to send backward, and I'm going to send backward again. There we go. Nice. I'm also going to decrease the opacity a little bit to make sure the core product's right at the front. And I'm also going to shorten this one down because I just want it about 10 seconds or so. But now from something that was static, now we've turned something into an animated piece of content using this kind of mixed media approach. And that's really one of the key benefits of Adobe Express, because we've taken the kind of core fidelity of a Photoshop project and then remixed it. Now, we've got some great ways that we can start repurposing it. We've already spoken about resize, how we could change this into many different formats. And we've also added a whole heap of new features to translate to. So if we ever need to translate anything, we can go ahead and make this into French, for example, and that's it. And we can now even choose a tone of voice as well related to that. So we can be very specific with our translations. And I'll have this informal and we'll translate that, which will then create a new page with it translated. So we can start to think about how quickly we can start repurposing all of our content. All right, so I won't wait for the translation to happen. Oh, there we go, it's done already. So anyone who can speak French on the call can tell me the accuracy of this, because I am not the right person to judge, I'll tell you that. So I'm going to head back to here. Now, what we can do again to make this a bit more interesting, I'm going to select multiple layers, I'm going to group this, I'm going to use some animation, and we're going to have this one popping in. And for all of this, again, I'm going to group that to make it easier, and then have that one fading in. So there we go. We can just kind of show the layer timing and define what happens when. And just as we saw before, we can start seeing, you know, changing something that was very static into a nice animated piece of content. So that's all looking good. Happy with that. Now, at this moment too, there's a couple other things that we could do. So naturally, we could go ahead and share that to social, which we can do here. We're going to press share to social again. Going to use multiple different channels for this, so TikTok too. And here we can define what format of Insta post we want this to be. So I'm going to make this a reel, and I'm just going to write Sips at Sunset, and I'm going to use the caption writer to help us again. Something went wrong. Oh no, live demos. We'd survived so far with this. So sunset, drinks on the beach at sunset. Let's see if we can generate a caption off that. Typically works best the more words you use. Oh god, yeah, I'm a sucker for a pun, so we're going to go with that. So perfect. Of course, you'd be spending a bit more care and craft than I am in this instance, but I'm mindful of time. We can also edit our reel cover as well to make sure our thumbnail and the preview we get in the grid looks good. And again, previewing is always your friend. So, you know, naturally, because this is a reel, we can make sure our safe zones are all good. So that looks perfect for us. And again, I will save that one as draft and pop that out next week. So add that one as draft. So very quickly, we're starting to build our calendar. Now, the final thing I wanted to show you real quick is the ability now, because if we've created this as a template that we want others to use, what we can start doing here is locking elements of this. So we could go ahead and say, I don't want people to change this, or maybe I want people to not change where this text is, but I want them to maybe update the copy, but actually not mess about with the format of the design. So we now can start creating templates and define how we want to lock them down. So that can be really useful, because when we press share, as I've been talking about templates throughout the course of this and our own templates, when we make a template here, I'm going to call this the IG story template. We can then save those templates to our brands as well. So wherever we want to save them, I'm going to save them to our social selling team one. We can define the locks as well. So especially if we want people to be able to or have restriction around what people can use. If we toggle these on, anyone working with these templates will not be able to use the Adobe Express media or colors or whatever. It will be restricted to everything you set in your brand. And that can be really, really powerful. And with that, though, once you set those restrictions, you then save that template. So saving those templates, saving it back to your brand, and that kind of ends us back right where we started, where in our brands, if I just go back to home for one final time, in our brands here, we'll have all of the templates that we've created, templates that are now locked down based on how we've defined we wanted those locks to be, of which we can share those as projects with anyone that we want to, which means everyone can have access to these templates, which are social first, which are built to drive engagement, and of which, you know, everything is all built around a strategy that makes sense, that's built around our audience, and ultimately helps us scale our content creation efforts right the way from planning and organization through to creation and through to publishing. Right, that has been a marathon from me, and I've finished just about in time. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if we have any questions. And thank you, Marion, for oh, nice that we've got someone that can actually speak French on the call, and I'm very pleased that the translation was correct. So thank you, Jessica. It feels like I go a mile a minute, so sorry for that. If we're always happy to do follow-up sessions if we need to, and of course this is recorded. Right.
Thank you so much, Andy. That was absolutely brilliant. I learned loads. That was amazing. Thank you. Nice comment we had from Denise as well. Denise said that she's fascinated by the Make brand template color shuffle. That's good to see. But thank you everyone for joining today. I hope you found the session really useful. We do have a couple of minutes left, so if anyone does have any questions they're burning to ask, please do. You can come off your mic if that's easier. Great. Otherwise, if not, please go ahead and have a look in the chat. You'll see that we've dropped some links in there for the rest of our webinar series coming up, and also the Creative Campus newsletter, if you'd like to subscribe to that, and also our student badging series as well. Thank you, everyone. Some lovely comments from you all. Brilliant.
Appreciate it.
Fab. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining today.
Thank you. Have a great afternoon.